Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Thank you so much to the team at Chester. What an amazing and inspiring building that is. And I must say, I'm really looking forward to the Constellations exhibition there. I have been totally inspired by Alita's posts of her stargazing and her looking at all the geometry of that wonderful building. So, but here now we are ready with our next presentation, and I'm going to hand over to Alex McCallum to introduce it. So we'll say goodbye.
Hello, everybody. Very nice to virtually be with you all again. I have great pleasure in introducing our next speaker and presentation. Tessa Hunkin is, I think we can say, the woman who puts the Tessa in Tesserae. She's a London-based mosaic artist and is known for her exquisitely executed mosaics. She initially trained and worked as an architect before joining forces with Emma Biggs at the then recently founded Mosaic Workshop in Holloway, North London. Mosaic offered a way of developing a lifelong interest in colour and decoration while still working in an architectural context. Tessa has worked on a wide range of public and private commissions, including work for Terence Conran, the Sultan of Oman, and Aston Villa Football Club. You can also see examples of her work in Westminster Cathedral. I think you can safely say, as we'll see here, that her work is exquisitely executed and often shows elements of humour in them. Tessa has also co-authored several books on mosaics with Emma and is a regular contributor to Andamento. Today, she's going to be talking about her Hackney Mosaic project. She's very kindly made a film for us, and we'll follow that with a live Q&A session. So if you think of anything you'd like to ask, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, so I can put your questions to her. Okay, thank you. I think we'll watch the film now.
Hello, BAM. Thank you very much for asking us to do this presentation. It's about the Hackney Mosaic project. I'm going to talk for a little bit about the history of the project, and then my colleagues here, who are volunteers at the project, will talk a little bit about their experience. Then there'll be a slideshow where there'll be some pictures of the work that we've done around Hackney and elsewhere. And then at the end, there's a short film about an event we held recently here on Hackney Downs to celebrate the mosaic of the Hounds of Hackney Downs. I'm Tessa Hunkin, and I set up the Hackney Mosaic project back in 2011. Originally, it was an Olympic project. My idea was that because the Olympics started in the classical world and mosaic started in the classical world, it was obvious that we needed a mosaic to commemorate the London Olympics in 2012. It wasn't really obvious to anybody else, but I did manage, after a lot of work, to persuade Hackney to go with the idea. And I did this in conjunction with the Hackney Recovery Services. I wanted to do a Roman-style mosaic because it occurred to me that it might be a way of making a community mosaic that worked rather well. I was a professional mosaicist, and to be honest, I was often a little bit disappointed by community mosaic. And I thought by going back to the Roman tradition, it would give everybody a kind of style that they could follow. So it would unify the work. And although it would be the work of many hands, it would all kind of hang together in a way that sometimes community mosaics don't so much. And the other idea behind the project was to use the therapeutic aspects of mosaic. I know professional mosaicists find this a hard concept to grapple with, because obviously if you do anything professionally, it's incredibly stressful and doesn't feel like therapy at all. But there is something about working with your hands that is very calming, and it kind of interferes with the normal patterns of thought and gives you a little holiday from your head, perhaps. I don't know. It's always worked for me, and I suppose that's why I thought it might work for other people. If I've ever been upset by anything, my first instinct is to go and make something, and then often I feel a little bit better. And it does seem to have worked here, in that it's now 10 years on, and although the project started as only for 6 months, we're still going. People enjoyed doing it, and so here we are. It's grown a bit since, or it's developed in various different ways. One thing we do is we go out and we do projects with other groups, schools and hospitals and things like that. And by doing that, we recruit people from other areas. Or local people are encouraged to join as well. I think it's important that the project is defined by mosaic, by what we do and what we're interested in, rather than the particular problems that people may have. So it's nice that it's a very mixed group. And the other way it's developed is that people make their own work. You've seen all the examples on the wall behind me. It's an incredibly varied and interesting collection of different approaches to mosaic. And it helps us to raise money to keep the project going. I know the project has been a great success for me because it's allowed me to do what I wanted to do, and I wanted to make large mosaics in public places. I think cities should be entertaining, and I don't see myself as an artist really, but a designer and maybe an entertainer in a way. And I hope over the years I've been able to make Hackney a bit more entertaining. And now I'm going to pass over to my colleagues, and they can talk about their experience of the project.
Hello, my name's Ken Edwards. I joined the Mosaic Project in 2012, about 8 months after it had started. I was told about the project while I was at a recovery service, and I thought, well, I'll give it a try. When I went to the project, my first impression was, as I went in the door, oh my gosh, when I looked and I saw a man sitting at a table cutting extremely small tiles, even smaller. And I thought, well, no, he was cutting them into different shapes. He looked up and said hello, and then I heard a voice say to me, hi, are you Ken? And it was Tessa. Tessa came along and explained to me about the Mosaic Project, and then she took me up to Shepherdess Walk Park to show me what they'd been working on so far. I thought to myself, well, I'd seen Mosaic work on TV, but it was mainly in films, and it was like big tiles. It was awe-inspiring what I saw, so I went back to the shop, but I was still in two minds about joining the group. But my plan was to say to Tessa that I was going to come back the next time and give it a go, but I think Tessa kind of read my mind or knew what I was thinking, because she instinctively said to me, oh, you can sit here next to Mark and he will show you what to do, and if I'm not about. Tessa then went away and she came back with some cutters and some nibblers, and she showed me how to use them. And then she appeared with, well, a piece of brown paper with half a circle on it with some lines, and told me that was what I had to do. I was still a bit nervous about doing the mosaic, because being brought up with a dad who was a builder, I'm used to working with big things, not tiny. But after the initial half an hour, I got the hang of it, and I thought that I could get on with this. And I continued doing it, and when 5 o'clock came, I found myself pretty upset that it was coming to a close. And on leaving, I couldn't wait for the next time to come back. I hear people saying about mosaic work being therapeutic, To me, I feel that mosaic work to me is calming and soothing. You know, you leave home and you've got problems at home, you come to the mosaic project, it's gone away, it all goes away. You just get down and your mind's on what you're doing. You get on the bus coming to the mosaic project and somebody upsets you, it's gone. So to me, it's somewhere where I feel safe and I feel happy. I call the mosaic project my second family. When people ask me about mosaic work, the easiest way that I describe it to them is I say to them, it's like doing a jigsaw puzzle, but all you got is a blank surface with an outline on it, and you have to cut your own pieces, make your own colour, and choose your own colours, and then get on with it. And like, as I said, I've been here now over 9 years. I'm the secretary of the project, and well, it's helped me in my sobriety, it's helped me in a lot of ways. Mosaic is a good form of making gifts for people, wedding presents for people who, well, if they've already got a flat, they've got everything in it, and like, if you make them something, it's something special. So to me, I'm glad that the Mosaic project went on longer than the 6 months, and I'm hopeful that it will continue to go on, because I really enjoy it and love being here. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Nicky Turner. I started doing mosaic in 2011. Tessa come to where I was working in Hanbury, Shoreditch, and done a small demonstration. I went and met up with her the following week, and she gave me a little board and said, just do your initials to your name. So I just done NT, and it was fairly easy, and I had it finished the following week. And then Tessa said, that's very good. Would you like to get involved and do something a bit more sort of bigger and more work? And I said, yes, I would. And I decided to do a mosaic of the Princess Diana, Princess of Wales. Not even Tessa said it's not something I would even attempt in doing. It's a bit out of my range. But I said, no, it's something I want to do. I feel very, very sort of blessed and happy about her. It's something I would like to do. And it took me 6 months in the end to start and finish it. It's since been sold to a friend of mine from church for £400 in cash. I've also done other mosaics since then. This is one of a person called Christopher Cornell. He was a singer, band member of a band called Soundgarden, and he was unfortunately, after a gig, was found hanging from his neck after a gig, and his friend tried to save him, but he was too late, and he passed away. And I was rather upset, because there's someone from when I first started driving that I listened to in my car. I've done this mosaic, but it's not really a mosaic of I would like to sell. This is something I'd like to keep for myself. It feels very personal to me. Tessa has always helped, and she's been very good. Anything I want to try and do, Tessa's always been there to give me her opinion and her help. And I'd like to carry on doing mosaic for the rest of my life. Thank you. God bless.
My name's David Lilly. I didn't find the project, the Hackney Mosaic Project found me. I was near the end of a short stay in St Anne's Psychiatric Hospital in Haringey, and was encouraged to come and work on the project, who were preparing a mosaic for the hospital. I'm a trained artist, so I was initially skeptical about whether I would enjoy it, but I did enjoy it. And I was encouraged to return to the hospital on a weekly basis, which was very helpful in terms of combating the stigma of being in a psychiatric hospital, because it's a very difficult environment to be in. And so I came back for a number of weeks, and then after the project there finished, I was encouraged to come to Hackney Downs to join the project on a permanent basis. And so I've now been with the project for about 5 years, and it's been tremendously therapeutic. For lots of reasons. One of the big things is being part of a community and working in a very, you put aside your ego, we join together on projects, and we support each other, and it's that in itself is a very helpful thing. But the activity itself is also very therapeutic, and it's a combination of mindfulness and mindlessness. Mindful in that you are very focused, particularly in my version of the activity, I become very focused on detail and cutting shapes, and I spend far too long on it. But that's in itself is a very as Tessa alluded to, it's very much you put aside your mind, your problems, your worries, and focus on what you're doing. But it's also mindless in that you can also do it in a very automatic way and be engaged with the people around you and chatting and laughing and all those things. So it's a really interesting combination of different helpful mental and physical activities. In lockdown, I found that I wasn't really doing it at home. Like a lot of people, I had lots of good intentions for doing things at home that didn't. And I know this is quite a common experience. However, the project was able to, in a limited way, resume fairly soon after the first lockdown. And so it gave another piece of structure back to help carry me and everyone else through that period, and it continues to do that. The other thing that's really great about, one of the many things that's really great about this project is coming to Hackney Downs and all the dogs, which you will see more about in this video. The dogs are fantastic and tremendously therapeutic in and of themselves, so that's been something that's really enjoyable.
This is a presentation about some of the commission work that the Hackney Mosaic Project has done. We started off in Shepherdess Walk. This was our Olympic project, and you can see it's very much in the Roman style. It has very sort of Roman-looking border patterns, and the way of laying is very traditionally Roman, everything made out of small square tesserae. And the treatment of the figures and the animals and the trees and everything is very much based on Roman models. We had lots of source material, and it was a way of showing people how mosaic problems of laying could be solved and how it had been done in the past. But also in the design, there are little modern elements as well. This was kind of like the joke behind it. So, there are headphones and skateboards. The woman having a picnic is holding a mobile phone, and actually it's one of those early ones that has a tiny little aerial, so it already has some period charm, only 10 years later. And the theme of the original two panels was the seasons, which is another very Roman idea. But we went on after that and did another wall panel to commemorate the name. We were celebrating the name of the place. So this shows the shepherdesses and their sheep. the inspiration for this was more Byzantine mosaics, I suppose, where there are many, many sheep portrayed, and a lot of inspiration for interesting patterns to render the fleece of the sheep. And also the border is definitely a common Byzantine idea of the leaves and the fruit. And then we still weren't finished. We went on and did a couple of pavements, again with very traditional Roman borders. But the central panel, the layout very inspired by a mosaic in Tunisia in the House of the Birds. But the subject matter is the kind of wild plants that you would find in Hackney. So there are brambles and buddleias and that kind of thing, and all with their names as well. I like to include lettering in the mosaics. That's a Roman thing to do, but it just makes them a little bit more interesting, a little bit more informative to look at. And this is a short film that shows the mosaics in situ. It's a quiet corner of the park, and it's surrounded by trees. And one of the things I like about Roman mosaics is their sense of dynamism, or particularly the North African ones, and the dynamic figures, or the illusion of movement in the mosaic is kind of reinforced by the actual movement of the shadows of the trees. And this is where all of us at the opening ceremony, Hackney was funding us then, and the people in the culture department of Hackney loved a good party, and they loved dressing up. So the woman in the front dressed as a shepherdess was actually the officer at Hackney who paid our invoices, but any excuse to dress up. So and we all enjoyed that a lot too. And then we went on to create this mosaic, again set up for us by the council kindly. It was a condition of the planning permission for the neighbouring Sainsbury's store that they should commission us to make a mosaic for their new store in Hoxton. Hoxton in the 19th century was a centre of entertainment just on the borders of London back then, and there were lots of music halls and that kind of thing. And the entertainments included acrobats and performing dogs. Again, the style of laying, working on what we'd learned from the Roman mosaics is quite traditional, and the way the figures are rendered with the dark and shade and the kind of outlines and things. But obviously the palette in this occasion is much livelier and more suited to a sort of theatrical theme. The only downside of the job was that it was for a Sainsbury's store, and it's on quite a busy corner, and I think a lot of people have never noticed that the mosaic is there because it is rather overshadowed by the giant loaf of bread put there by Sainsbury's. Anyway, in 2013, we moved to Hackney Downs. Again, this commission set up for us by the council to decorate this shelter, this rather curious structure, which is a shelter in the children's playground there. I think it's a place for parents to shelter when they can't prize their children away from the swings, but it's also quite popular with the children themselves, particularly now that it's been decorated with wild animals. It was a great opportunity for us because it meant that we could do more exotic animals than we'd done in the Shepherdess Walk mosaics, which focused on English wildlife or even London wildlife, which, as we know, is relatively limited. But because this was for children, it was a way of showing more exotic animals, most of which are the kind of animals that are found in Roman mosaics. Nilotic scenes feature a lot of different types of animals, and there are lots of clues and bits of inspiration about how they could be rendered. I have snuck in an okapi because they're such great animals and they work very well in mosaic. So there weren't any Roman okapis in mosaic because they hadn't been discovered at that point. But I hope I've helped to raise an entire generation of children in Hackney who know what the okapi is and who appreciate it. This is an important element of our larger commissions. Wherever we've got room, I like to include a panel where people can put their own names. This is often the most popular bit of the whole mosaic, and people spend longer doing their name than they do working on any of the rest of the commission. And they're given freedom to use whatever colours and font and extra little motifs they would like. And people are very proud to see their names up. And sadly, some of the people whose names are here are no longer with us. And so it also acts as a rather touching memorial for the sad few who haven't made it through. And this is the opening event for that mosaic. Again, you can see a bit of dressed up as animals this time, with a celebrity guest, Russell Brand, another wild animal in the middle there. And then we moved on to do this panel. By this time, we had no funding from the council. In fact, we didn't have any money coming in at all. We had a bit left over from the previous commissions. The Sainsbury's one particularly had been quite well paid. And this was a design that I'd done as an option for the shelter on Hackney Downs. And we found another home for it in the West Hackney Recreation Ground, which is at the back of the churchyard of the local church. And the local vicar was very supportive of us and gave us this wall. And a bit later, they gave us a small grant as well. So we were able to complete the scheme by making these alphabet panels. And here is the team proudly looking at their work. We make everything in the indirect method, partly because of the size of the pieces and, it means we can work through the winter. But also a lot of the group have some physical problems, and so it's important that they can work comfortably at a table and they don't have to suffer bad external conditions. We were then very fortunate to get a commission London Zoo, because we'd done the wild animals. They wanted us to make something for their new exhibit, The Land of the Lions. This was a fabulous job. It was a great brief. They gave us an entire story to illustrate about the relationship between the deer and the monkeys and the lions, basically. The monkeys warn the deer of the approach of the lions, and so that they can all escape the marauding lionesses, watched over by a rather grumpy lion. I think I already mentioned that we began to do outreach projects as well. Other organisations were generally better at getting grants than we were, and so they would get a grant for a mosaic project and we would go and help. So the Albion Parade was done with a primary school, and the children helped us make the panels around the edge, and then the central panel was made by my team at Hackney, and a similar process with the Garden of Hope, which we made with patients at St Anne's Hospital, and which was where we met David for the first time. And so again, the subject matter, the Garden of Hope, with the gates open, came from discussions with the patients. This is what they dreamed of, and this panel now hangs in the courtyard of outside one of the wards. We get private commissions as well. That was a source of income that helped us through. So these are both in people's gardens in Hackney. And on the left, there's a front garden path, which that's a great job because it's still in the public realm, even though it's funded by a private client. And the one on the right is one that we've just fixed this year in Brighton. So we're going a bit further afield. Again, that's a doorstep, and so it can be seen from the street. So that's nice. And then we got another commission from London Zoo, even better, this one, because it's at the main entrance. And there are two panels showing the penguins on one side and the squirrel monkeys on the other. The zoo chose the animals to illustrate for being particularly good value to go and visit. Some of the larger and more charismatic animals are less good value in the zoo, often in that they lurk away, and also they're slightly more prone to scandal, whereas these penguins and squirrel monkeys were considered a safe bet. But it's great because they're on the outside of the zoo, and you don't have to pay to go into the zoo to see them. In 2018, we got a fabulous job for this pavement for the Acton estate. Which is a council estate, but they managed to get some money out of London and Quadrant Housing Association, who were building a new estate opposite and had caused a lot of nuisance and noise for several years. And the public artwork was their compensation. London and Quadrant wanted to give them something else, but they forgot to consult with the residents of the Acton estate, and the Acton estate residents very kindly wanted us to do it and not the artists that London and Quadrant had chosen. And so we got to do this large pavement about the idea of what Hackney used to be like, that it used to be farms and orchards before all the development took place. So yes, it's a simple idea, but it was great fun to do, and yeah, that was a lovely job. We're working now on a series of panels for Tower Court, which is a development in Stoke Newington. These are the entrances to the different blocks. They're all named after different bits of local wildlife. So one is peregrine, one is kingfisher, one is Dorbenton, which is the bat on the right. And then there's a sort of mixed panel for the marketing suite that shows all four creatures, including the barbel, which is a fish, the fourth creature. The job that I haven't really talked about is the Hounds of Hackney Downs, which we started in 2018, largely supported by crowdfunding and donations from the local community. And you'll see more about this job in the short film that follows. This summer, we held a party to celebrate the Hounds of Hackney Downs. We hadn't been able to have a party last year because of the pandemic, but we were able to have one this year, which was quite good because it coincided with our 10th anniversary. So it was a joint party for over 80 dogs and the Hackney Mosaic project.
"24 dog portraits you can see. To the artists, a job well done. They made your mosaic so perfectly, taking time, working diligently. With Dora, maybe she's an explorer, who's hanging out with Milo and Riley. These three posed so patiently and took to the camera instantly. Zena, who could be the warrior princess, with Jeff, Olive, Ginger and Emil, all together keeping it real. With Boy, Bonnie, with Boy, Bear and Nelly too, completing this set of 9 for you. Jasper and Joey alongside Bunkle, with Slender Stella, Molly and Baloo. 6 more dogs that pose for you. With Cheery Huxley, Rocket and Pepper, keeping this 9 all together. Lastly with these lovely 3, Bonnie, Zora and Charming Reggie, all looking on so earnestly. And to all the dogs on this wall, you're in our hearts, one and all. Thank you.
Thank you, Tessa. It's lovely watching that film. It really is so inspiring. So thank you to you and everyone at Hackney Project for making that for us. I have a question, which is, how did you maintain the community through lockdown?
Well, it was a bit tricky, and I was very worried when it happened because obviously they're all quite vulnerable people, and I didn't quite know how to keep them together. But we were fortunate that the weather was very good, and it so happened that there were 3 quite large commissions that we'd made the previous year and that needed fixing, we sort of transformed fixing into a kind of social occasion. So I would be slaving away actually doing the work with a couple of assistants, and sometimes even with the famous Walter Bernardin, and the rest of the group could come and watch us, and it would be outside, and as I say, the weather was generally lovely, and so everybody could chat and keep a safe distance from each other, and it worked very well and helped just sort of remind people that there was a focus in their lives, and that we would be back together again before long. So that was the first lockdown, and then after that we were able to start again, but at reduced numbers because of social distancing and all that kind of thing. But actually it worked in our favour, because we stayed open rather longer than everybody else. We stayed open almost until Christmas, and all the shops had to close, but we had our little stall outside still selling mosaic things for Christmas. And so I think almost everybody in Hackney got a mosaic for Christmas last year, and we did unbelievably well. I mean, we couldn't believe how much money we made. Then of course we had to close, and it was locked down again, and the winter one was harder, and people did find it hard to work at home. I did devise some little things that didn't involve cutting. I mean, having the space to work at home is a problem for a lot of people, but more than that, I think it was the motivation, and most people said that they just they needed to be in the room with their friends to actually get working, and it didn't feel the same working at home on their own. So yeah, it was a great relief when we could all get back together again.
Yes, I think it was a great relief for all of us.
Yeah.
There's lots of lovely comments rather than questions about the work. Sandra says Tessa's strategy for a unified style by using Roman principles was obviously extremely successful, and that your video answered all her questions as it went along, and the volunteers did a phenomenal job. Hackney is lucky for all the work. What treasures. I was interested to know how you train people to work to your style, and do they pick it up really quickly, or do you have, because it is so beautiful?
Yeah, well, it's tricky, because I don't want to be laying down the law too much. The whole idea is that it's an enjoyable activity, and it's rather different from proper teaching. I don't really call it teaching, because it's I want people to enjoy themselves and to work within a level that makes them content. I suppose it helps. I do draw everything out, in some detail. I find that the borders are a great boon in starting people off. When I worked commercially, Roman borders were the bane of our lives, because they were so repetitive, and that was, people always wanted Greek key around the edge of their bathrooms, all rolling weight or something, and it was really difficult to get people to concentrate for long enough to do, several meters of the same thing. But in the project, it's just perfect, because it's a simple, repetitive thing. There's always a little bit that somebody else has already done. The pattern is drawn out, and so really, I suppose people learn by copying, which is the old traditional way of learning, and yes, it works very well. So if they start off doing traditional borders, they get the idea of working in little squares, and they learn how to do the cutting and things, and it sort of sets them off, and then some of them completely ignore everything I tell them. I mean, you could see in the work that Nikki does, the portraits of Chris Cornell. I mean, I call it anti-mento. He doesn't do any of the things that you should, and it's incredibly effective. And so, rules are there to be broken, I suppose. Yeah.
Yes, they certainly are. The sheep have got quite a fan following, it seems, and I can totally understand. And when we were chatting before, I mean, I think you have to retell the story, Tessa, about what you mean by scandal-prone animals, because I had to ask you that before when I saw the film.
Yeah, well, it's quite important to the zoo, because the larger animals, sometimes quite bad things they attract a lot of publicity, and if they misbehave, generally it hits the headlines and things. And recently there was a terrible episode where they introduced a new tiger to mate with a female tiger, and unfortunately the tiger killed the potential mate. So that's a scandal that they didn't want to raise in people's minds. So yeah, I mean, the squirrel monkeys are incredibly naughty, and they do bad things, but it's mostly they just throw people's mobile phones around and things like that. So it's not quite so bad. And also I think it's worth I think they wanted to advertise the squirrel monkeys because they're a bit hidden away, and they are incredibly good value. I highly recommend, if you're going to the zoo, check them out. Very good fun.
Great. They're certainly one of my favourites, along with the three-toed sloths, which I just love watching to see if they're going to move. I want to come back as one. Nikki Tudor has asked, what type of tiles did you use for the Roman style mosaics to achieve such subtle colourings?
Well, mostly, Chinker and Winkleman's, just the usual range. I do use some Emo de Briard Mazurka range, which have more intense colours. They're more expensive, so I use them sparingly. I mean, it is one of the problems about the project is that we're very much on a shoestring all the time. So, marble or something like that would never have been an option. And also, beyond most people's patience, I think, although it would have looked lovely. But yeah, so it's all kind of simple stuff. Yeah, but I think most of the ceramics, it's harder to make a really bad colour mistake with the ceramic range because they all kind of work with each other. So it kind of keeps things, it's a good range, I find.
Yeah. Ruth Ames White has asked, is there a Hackney Project Mosaic trail map for visitors?
Oh, yes, there is. Yes, there's a leaflet. There's a lovely leaflet with a map. Don't know how you get hold of it, mind you, without coming to the pavilion at Hackney Downs. You can email the project and I'll send you one. Yeah, but it definitely does exist. Yeah. And people, that was another thing we did in lockdown. I managed to get some help actually to get it printed because I thought it was a great thing for the local population because everybody had to go for walks, and God knows the walks began to get a bit boring after a while, didn't they? And so it it gave people destinations to go to, and it was quite popular.
Brilliant. And there was one more question I saw. Oh yes, are there any films of how you install the larger mosaics, or is it a trade secret?
Well, I've always meant to do one of those time-lapse things, but every time my camera falls into a bucket or something, and it doesn't. I've never managed to nail it. So I don't think it is all recorded. You can read my books. I've written the chapter about fixing the cement-based adhesive about 6 times, I think. So, it is all written there. I know it helps to actually see it happening up to a point. I mean, I don't know. I don't find actually YouTube videos all that helpful. The best thing is experience. Just do it and make mistakes, and then try not to make them next time.
Yeah, I think with YouTube you get the sort of finished lovely version, not the dear.
With the soothing music and all that. And
yes, this went ever so well.
Not quite like real life, is it?
Exactly. And leading on from that, do you do all your own installations with people, and do the project members help you?
Well, that's a good question. To begin with, when we had proper funding, when we had council funding, I worked with Walter Walter Bernardin, who I think has done presentations for you in the past, and he's professional and the go-to guy, but he's not cheap, and it became clear that if I wanted to keep going, I couldn't rely on him for every project because I just didn't have the money. So I started fixing things myself again. Ken helps me, who you've seen in the film. He's a very good assistant, and I have another assistant who helps as well, who's sort of strong and can carry the heavy things, because that is one of the problems about fixing, is that it's quite physical, and my knees aren't what they were, and not getting any younger and all that. So yes, but mostly fixing is quite fun. It's satisfying. So yes, we do mostly do our own fixing. I don't really involve the group in general because it's a process. You can't be interrupted. If there are too many people, it all goes wrong. I'm very, it's lovely if they're there to watch, and then they can go and make me cups of tea. That's always very good. But of course, because they make the small things as well, if they want to have a go at fixing, then they can make I help them do that. But for the big things, I need a bit more control, really.
Sure. Penny Tunbridge from BAM has just pointed out that if you have a PDF of the leaflet, we can put it on the website as long as it's not too large. So
yeah,
we can talk about that another time, Tessa, maybe.
Yeah.
We've got a few more minutes. Do you actively recruit new members or for the project, or are people referred to you? How does it work? Do you have a waiting list, for example?
Well, that's a good question, and I look back over the previous 10 years, and I can't. There was no system at all. It just sort of managed to work kind of organically. So there was a core group from the recovery services, many of whom have been with me, for like Ken, have been with me since the beginning, and Nikki. But then other people come and go, and so then there would be vacancies, and we did get a few more people coming from the recovery services. The chair of the Hackney Mosaic project was staff at Hackney Recovery, and he used to go and do sort of taster sessions and encourage people to come. But it very much tailed off recruitment from there. But then we picked up people from the outreach project. Local people came. I suppose what would happen would be that the room was a bit full, so new people coming would think, oh, actually, it's not much fun, it's too full, and then they would just naturally go away. And I never had to control it. I've tried to run it without having any, as few rules as possible, so people don't have to tell me in advance whether they're coming or not, because people have chaotic lives, and I felt it was important to be flexible around that, and that they didn't have to be committed to particular, extra points in their diaries if it made life more difficult for them. So I've always been keen to keep it without rules. But I have to say, because of the interruption of the pandemic, I now do have a huge waiting list of people who are interested in joining. But I also have my core group of about 12 people, which quite honestly fills the room. So I'm going to do a special session for the new volunteers as a Saturday afternoon special event. But whether I can maintain it or not, I am still undecided. I hope sort of over time it will revert to its sort of organic ecology, so it all kind of balances out, but we are slightly out of balance at the moment.
Okay. Corali's asked, how does it work out money-wise? Do you manage to get paid, or is it all voluntary?
Well, I get paid occasionally, is the answer. I try and go after these big commissions. So the big commissions are what kind of keeps us afloat. And then we get lots of little commissions and the sales and small things, which is, not inconsiderable. We make a few grand each year from selling the little things. We have an Etsy site as well. And so, people in Hackney now know about us, and if they need presents, they often come and see what we've got. So there is income that comes in, but on the other hand, there is also money that has to go out, because Hackney, having initially supported us, now charges rent for our studio. So that's a bit of an outgoing as well. But the big contracts, you know, well, as professional mosaicists know, there is money out there. So if I get a developer or something, then I charge a good price, and yeah, some of that then comes to me.
Great.
But I don't do grants. I can't do grants. I did try, but one of the things about the project, I think, is that makes it very difficult to get grants is that it's so mixed. Most grants are focused on, well, I tried for one recently, had to be men. In fact, I had women as well as men. Didn't apply. You know, old people, people in recovery from addiction is separate from people in recovery from mental health problems, and that, you know, all these pockets of money are kind of targeted for particular groups, and that's just not my philosophy of what I'm doing. So rather than go by their definition of how things should work, I thought, well, no, I'll find another way, and so that's what I do.
And it obviously works, Tessa. You know, all these people coming together, it works. I mean, I came to visit you. There was a lovely atmosphere. People really enjoy being there, don't they? It's very important to them.
Yes, well, and I mean, yeah, you know, the testimonies in the film were incredibly touching. I was very, you know,
they are really touching.
I find it very, very moving. I think really what keeps us together is partly Mosaic, but it's partly because we all like a good laugh. People who don't have a sense of humour don't stay very long, but everybody else just really comes to have a good laugh. Well,
that's it. And I must say, you know, I've been there 2 minutes and somebody gave me the biggest cup of tea I think I'd had in about 3 weeks. And I thought, yes, I can see why this works perfectly. It was just very, very, really nice atmosphere. So, you know, thank you for making me so welcome that day. It was lovely, really nice.
Well, I just, you know, mustn't paint too rosy a picture. We have our tensions. It's not always quite as jolly as that. But yeah, you know, there are good days and bad days. But, you know, by and large, we have little outbreaks, but then people make it up. It is really like a family.
Yeah, I totally see that. I think, unless there's any more questions, I think we're probably ready to wrap up. I would say, in having watched this film several times, it is very moving. And I think from the comments that have come through, what everyone will take away from this is the idea of mindfulness and mindlessness, which really sums up the whole experience of mosaic making. So thank you very much, Tessa. It's been great, really great.
Thank you.
A pleasure. I think everyone, that's our last session before lunch. We'll be back at 2 with Julie Sperling. But if you want to keep your laptops on during the breaks, you will see some memories of past forums. So don't go too far. But thank you, everyone, very much. Thanks, Tessa.
Thank you.